Okay, we're back with John Dew, Ross Miller, Craig Muirhead, and Kyle Warren, four of the more prominent composers of the last decade, anyway, who are creating and putting out stuff at a great rate. I thought, maybe, Ross, why don't we talk about, you know, is your goal with composing really to have your music played, or is it for just to create? Uh, what do you think of that?
I think it would be nice if people played it. I absolutely. But I don't think it's the absolute goal. Yes, obviously you want people to play your music. And I guess you can play it yourself. If it's there's nothing more kind of that I like it when people play their own tunes because it shows that they're kind of happy to play them, so they must think it's good. I guess as well. I think that's definitely a good compliment to like your own tune if you feel it well enough in it that you can play it yourself, and then hopefully other people will play it. But I don't think it's super important. I think I think definitely like just kind of getting it out there is good enough for me. Yes.
Yeah, and Kyle, what do you think of that? Where does the satisfaction come from? Where does the drive? What's the purpose for you?
Yeah, I think the purpose kind of almost depends. Some like when I was younger, I grew up in Lumen and Clyde Pipe Band at the time when the band was coming through the grades, and it was a great outlet. I had the opportunity to write and contribute to the medley, so that was really the sole purpose of my music at that point was just writing for the band for the level of the band at the time as we were in like grade 4, grade 3, grade 2 or whatnot. And then of course like if you have other opportunities like Ross has just brought his album out recently. If you've got an album opportunity, then you're going to write almost very different music potentially, with that outlet and other instruments involved. So I guess yeah, where your music can go is partly where if you have that chance to get out there, you've got that chance, then that dictates what you're writing, how you're writing, why you're writing. I guess at the end of the day, you're writing for yourself. But as Ross says, if someone plays it, that's the best feeling, especially if you're walking around and then you hear it out of nowhere. That is the best feeling, And I mean, if we could all get to somewhere like Don Bradford, Ryan Canning, kind of, in the pipe band world of music, that would be pretty cool because their tunes are out there all the time. I mean, that's maybe a bit of a goal, to try and get your tunes that well played. But yeah, if one tune gets played by one other person and they like it, then it was worthwhile doing, as much as you like it, and that's also worthwhile.
And Craig, as someone who's had your music played by bands quite a bit, what are your thoughts on that? Is it art for art's sake, or is it creating music to make sure that it's heard by other people?
Well, I'd actually just echo what the other guys say in that if you hear your music played by another person, it's the best feeling ever. And actually, when someone goes ahead and buys your book, spends their hard-earned wages on a book because they want to learn some of your tunes, that's just that's a lovely, lovely thing. You can't beat that. What I would say though, again, is like we talked about a little bit about in the last segment, having grown up a little bit and as my own worst critic, if I like the music, then I'm quite happy about that. And actually, if no one else does, okay, you might secretly think, oh, I wish someone would play this tune. But yeah, if I get some sort of pleasure out of it, then I'm usually quite content with that, I would say.
Interesting.
That's not that I don't love hearing people play the music, because that's I suppose the ultimate sort of goal for everyone.
Yeah, well, having to please yourself, it sounds like it's a common theme where you've got to like what you're putting out. So it comes down to your own taste and in music. Now, John, you might be in a different kind of situation where you're trying to make that profession. So it's critically important for your music to be played and liked and picked up by other musicians, other pipers, other orchestral kinds of things too. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, for me, there's kind of two parts for it. So I really like a lot of the competition MSR material. I've been trying to do some what I kind of classify as neo-traditional. So it's the same style but newer. And the goal for that is to absolutely get as many people playing that kind of thing as possible, because you get people like Chris Armstrong. A couple of Ryan Canning's tunes would be of the same ilk. Like all these different composers that I've written, and you can tell it's like this is for like competition music in mind. So I feel strongly we don't need to keep playing the same John McCall marches, G.S. McClellan marches, Swiss Bass Reels. They're great, but why not play new stuff? So for me, when I write solo competition pipe stuff, it's absolutely to try and get it into that competition field of repertoire. But on the flip side, if it's let's just say the folk scene or artistic music, new music, it's kind of about creating, as Ross said, your own voice, your own identity, and your own style. And for me, it's more, I would feel a lot more success if I was to do a tour or a bunch of gigs where I was doing my own music, whether that's in an ensemble or just me and another guitarist, because they hired me because of my style, not necessarily my composition, but my style, my way of doing things, and the kind of essence of music that I want to try and capture. That to me is arguably more important, because as a professional, that's what you want to get hired from. And even if you take someone like Fred Morrison, he still plays tunes that aren't his tunes, but he's hired, or not hired, but like he's performing a lot because of the artistic presence that he has.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that's just as important, because there's loads of artists that could do a 100% like self-composed album, but so many of them don't, because there are other tunes out there that are getting used, but it fits their style of what they want to do, you know. So for me, it's more about an artistic presence, and on the kind of, let's just call it let's call it non-competitive piping. It's not necessarily about getting other people to play the tunes. Competitively, yes, because I'd like to add to the canon of repertoire, but on the flip side, not necessarily.
Yeah, if it comes to mind, some of the greatest composers ever. You just mentioned G.S. McLennan, John McCall, Willie Laurie. They didn't really have pipe bands per se, playing their stuff. It's an interesting kind of thing where we are right now. I mean, do you need pipe bands today to get your Highland bagpipe music out there? Is it critically necessary today, where I think 10, 15, 20 years ago, if bands weren't playing your stuff, you probably never would be really heard. Kyle, any thoughts around that?
Yeah, no, I think you're spot on, Andrew. And I think, again, maybe technology plays its part, and it's probably my downfall, the technology element of it. You see people putting up videos of themselves, and some of it's fantastic, not just the music, but obviously the production as well. And maybe at times that has to go hand in hand if you want to be taken seriously to a degree, I guess. But again, yeah, that idea of just being able to do it yourself, the one-man band idea, that is a thing now, and like you say, 20 years ago, that wasn't the case, and you did rely on, if it wasn't yourself, if you weren't a professional musician or someone who's doing lots of recitals, but if a band's playing your music, then it's out there. So no, I agree entirely with you on that one. And just before we caught up, obviously I was having to rethink about things, and the realization has came to me over the years that we're a niche big time in the musical sense, but then the composing thing is a niche within a niche, and then the competitive aspect, and okay, like as I probably mentioned earlier, I guess I am writing more for the competitive style than anything else. So that's a niche within the niche within the niche, and it just gets smaller and smaller, So you're not going to sell thousands of books. I think we all have to, we've all came to that realization a long time ago, that it's just one of the things you do, and it's one of the things you enjoy. And if the pennies aside, you just got to be an enjoyment factor first. But yeah, it's a very niche thing.
And Craig, do you think bands are still, critically important to getting your stuff out there?
Pipe bands. Absolutely. They're hugely important, because whether we all, like it or not, that is the main focus of the piping world these days. It might not have been back in, G.S. McLennan's days, but it is now. So if a band from grade 4 to grade 1 chooses to play your music, then you've automatically got a huge audience every weekend in the summer, and you've got up to 20 or more than 20 pipers who know your music inside out, without making a mistake, from memory. What I would say, though, is I think we'd all appreciate, and probably not just the four of us, composers in general, would appreciate credit being given to the composers when their music's played by a pipe band. So whether that comes from the band itself or from the associations running the competitions, because I listen to so many bands throughout the year and think, that's a cracking tune. I've got no idea what it is or who wrote it. So actually, it would be great if that sort of if that message got across, that actually someone's taking the time to sit and write this tune. But even at that, we are a small enough community that if you do hear a tune, eventually in a few weeks' time, you're going to know someone who knows someone who knows what tune it is, and you're gonna work it all out.
And John and Ross, maybe together, you guys, having that, it's kind of come to mind that a pipe band can be the equivalent of radio. If you get a top band playing your stuff, it's like having, your composition, your song getting out on Radio 1, or whatever the equivalent might be in any country, which could be a breakthrough kind of thing. Do you think along those lines as well? Ross, maybe you first.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I personally have not had anything played, but I've written some kind of harmony stuff, and we were kind of encouraged as well to do like kind of arranging and things for concerts and stuff, just to kind of spread the load a bit. And kind of we did the most recent Inveraray concert we did was in Belfast a couple of years ago, and myself and John, we played in a quintet, and I think I arranged the first tune and John did the second and the third tune, so it's like a bit of kind of a collaboration thing of things like that. So like allowing the other members of the band to kind of think, and that's great from coming from, I guess, above us in the band, allowed us to do that. But I guess for the competition music, yes, obviously it'd be good to get your tunes heard. And I think it is good at a pipe band, as Craig says, you go around and you hear, oh, that's a great tune, what's that? And I would like to probably echo that thing of like, it'd be good to kind of get credited, or because in the program it says like what the tune's called, but it never says like who wrote it or anything. And I guess it's kind of, I guess, down to the band as well, because quite a lot of bands use the wrong name for things, just not on purpose, just like because that's what they know it as, or you kind of get that, or some people think it's a traditional tune when it's actually been written by someone in the last 10 years. I've heard that quite a lot. Actually kind of happened a few times in I don't know, a wee story when I was in I played at the Lorient competition a few years ago in the McCrimmon competition, and yes, so someone played like in the Irish section, like, oh, this is a traditional tune, and I was like, no, it's not. Like, I know the guy who wrote that in Glasgow, and they were playing it in the traditional Irish section, thinking it was an Irish tune when it's actually like a modern Scottish tune. So
interesting
things like that about like kind of crediting the composer. I think that's really good what Craig was saying, and I guess John.
Yeah, John, without bands, maybe the kind of bridges to the next kind of idea. We don't have pipe bands out there competing. We don't have them playing at all, really, except for, the Southern Hemisphere right now. Are you finding yourself having to come up with other ways to get your music out there, knowing that pipe bands are so critically important? What other avenues have you taken mainly to get stuff out?
Well, I think to kind of get back to the original question of how important pipe bands are, yes, it's important, but why couldn't you just do the same thing as a solo competitive piper? Because I imagine that Donald MacLeod probably would have gone to these wee games and would have played his 2-4 matches at these games. I don't see why we couldn't do that now, And at Sky last year, I played one of Chris Armstrong's tunes, and I got a prize from it, and it kind of just gave me the confidence to think, right, well, why, like, pipe bands are doing it, why can't we just apply this to the same thing in the solos? So it's that kind of thing. And as the world solo competition thing that Yori Chisholm runs and a couple of others, the very first ones I did, I just did your not box standard, but the kind of canon repertoire. And then I got a couple of prizes, and I thought, right, why not do a Chris Armstrong tune or an Alan McDonald tune? And I still got a prize or two. And then I thought, well, why can't I do one of my own tunes? And it's that way of like these solo competitions are still happening. So that's an outlet. But also, like I say, there's more to the artistry than just writing the tune. There's the actual production of an album, an EP, or a suite of some sort that is there to be heard, not just looked at in a book.
I guess, maybe it just comes to mind. I mean, it's an interesting kind of discussion about the solo competitions. I guess, pipers would want to put out music that's familiar and they know that it's likable. So they're, if you throw out a tune that maybe is unfamiliar, maybe takes a few listens before it becomes kind of acceptable. I guess pipe bands go through this too. A little bit afraid of new music, I guess, in for fear of just not being likable or from
Andrew,
the familiarity.
for me, that's spot on. So when I was like competing in the solos more than I do nowadays, you go to open in Inverness and you've got 1 year, so you've got one chance that year to play it open, you've got one chance that year to play Inverness, and you do go safe because, well, I'm not saying you go safe in terms of the tunes that you pick. You might pick complex, really difficult tunes to play, but it's hard to take a risk in terms of what tunes you're putting in there, especially when you see and absolutely no disrespect to any of them, but the judges in front of you, real amazing players, traditionalists, and you know what they like, or you feel like you know what they're going to like. You don't want to take that risk as a player. Well, I found I didn't. I those big ones, I'd put in the odd jig somewhere here or there around the games that I had written myself and just see if anyone noticed. It never got picked though.
It is interesting. I've talked to a number of judges about this. I know one, at least one prominent adjudicator who, when presented with 3 or 4 tunes to pick from, will always pick the one that he doesn't know. But that kind of thinking, I find that being a rarity. John, maybe let's pick up on this theme as well, like that familiarity factor. For getting your music out there and heard, introducing it, the composer himself or herself putting the music out there. Is there a certain amount of risk along the lines that we've talked about when it comes to competition?
Yeah, there is, but I mean, at the same time, like it depends what you want out of it. If you want to win a prize, then yeah, just play the bog standard stuff. If you want to try and make a statement, or if you want to try and actually contribute to the art form in the long run, you can't just keep playing the same stuff, really. And at the end of the day, the judge is actually there to assess good music. They're not actually there to assess if you're playing the correct repertoire. That it's like it's that way of you just, I don't know. There's certainly risk, but they also, like, probably morally wouldn't want to put down a performance. If it was an outstanding performance, they can't put you 5th just because they didn't know the tune.
Oh, yes, they can.
Yeah, they can, but like,
yeah,
they don't gain anything from it, and it's that way of I don't know. I don't know how best to put it, but it's like, they say, like, or I've heard people say, I can't necessarily judge a tune that I don't know. And I'm like, right, well, if you went to a Coldplay concert, would you just say you wouldn't enjoy the concert just because you didn't know the songs? They release a new album. Could you say, oh, I can't make a judgment on how good that album is because I don't actually know the songs? And it's like, well, surely if it's the same idiom, if it's a 2/4 March or a Strathspey, like, it's the same idiom, you're judging the same thing. You're not judging the repertoire. You got to judge how well they perform it, because at the end of the day, it's a performance, whether or not the repertoire is old or new.
Yeah, interesting analogy. Coldplay, like if everyone wants to hear The Scientist, and when they play that, it's like, yeah, but if they come out with the latest thing for the latest album, it's gonna, everyone kind of, maybe it's the same sort of, I don't know, that same kind of process that happens with judges. Ross, thoughts around this, like, is it a philosophical kind of change? Do judges or audience need to change their mindset a little bit?
I guess so, but it's been the age-old kind of thing, hasn't it? It's like, do you play to, do you pick like the tunes and how you play in order to impress like a specific judge, or do you just play how you play and hope that it kind of works? I guess, that's certainly been something that I've kind of spoken about as well. And obviously, we're, I guess, not at the highest level of solo competitors, but it's certainly like, it's something that's like, I want to play like how I play, and I want to play the music that I want to play, or I want to play the music in the way that I want to play it. And then you get, oh, that was too fast today, or that was too slow today, or like things like that. And it just ends up making, like, as soon as you kind of step out of that, and then you go, oh, actually, I quite fancy just winning the prize. Certainly for me, that's kind of what it's been like. So yeah, as Craig says, it is easier to go safe, I think, in terms of like trying to climb the ladder. And I guess perhaps you could put the onus on the premier players who have kind of won it all. And like you can make it there's good competitions like the Donald McLeod competition. You've got to play Donald McLeod tunes. You hear tunes at that you've never heard before, and they end up being great. And then because you've heard someone, I guess, of stature playing it, you can then maybe take it to yourself and play it. But like yeah, there's certainly been it's just a difficult thing to try and kind of weigh up your options in terms of that. And it's the same with the bands, and it's as you say, it's like there's only one chance to hear it at the Worlds. But the good thing nowadays about, as Kyle I think mentioned earlier, about the kind of social media side of things, like you can play it at Paisley or the first championship of the year, and then people hear it on YouTube before the new medley. So like you can get it out a couple of times on YouTube, so like people have got a chance to hear it, so it's not totally unfamiliar by the time it gets to the Worlds. And in terms of that, because I feel like you sometimes, to get these new ideas out there, you do need a couple of listens, and that's not bad. It's just because it's new and different, and you've got to take time to take it in.
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. Kyle, John, I think talked about some of the online competitions being more creative, and I think Ross also mentioned that too. Would you like to see that more with when pipe bands return, a little bit more creativity to encourage more kind of new stuff happening rather than more bands playing Highland Wedding?
Yeah, I think there's room for both. It's funny, in the last Piping Today magazine that came out, I was asked for like a bit of a comment on 2020 Vision, I think it was called, and just like the question you've said there. And actually my point was about the MSR and how like some of the best moments in piping for me have been standing in the band playing the MSR when it's on. So of course there's room for that still, and I feel personally that there is and always will be. But no, it's a great question as well. I think as soon as you bring in the competitive aspect to music as well, they go hand in hand, and they also do this at the same time. I mean, I've just watched the football before joining you today, and you can play fancy football and lose every game, or you can be sensible and start trying to win the game. And if we're going to talk about piping and the competitive and the sport aspect, it's the same kind of thing. You can go all out with new music, and if it's not doing it for you, then maybe you play a bit safer in every sense of the word. And bands over the years that have been successful have maybe found that balance. I mean, like just moving back from Australia recently, obviously Victoria Police in the 90s, phenomenal in every sense of the word, and their music was so iconic, and that's when I started learning. So Master Blaster's albums, Live in the Rockies stuff, that new material from those phenomenal composers down under, it was new and it was accepted, and it got accepted. So I guess partly, as we've probably all commented on, it's that case of it will be accepted in time. How long can you wait? How long are you prepared to wait for it to be accepted? If it's just you and the solos, you can have that conversation with yourself. If you've got to, keep 40 people in the band on side as well, maybe not everyone's got year after year after year to kind of plug away down one path if it's not getting the results, unless the music keeps you happy more than anything. But I have to say the winning is fun too. So you've got to find the balance.
Yeah, really interesting stuff. Maybe in the next part, we'll talk about some of that move away potentially, or the need for pipe band competitions in general to be more creative.